All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. It is great to see you. So this afternoon, we are going to be having a panel discussion about conducting collaborative research as graduate students at CSU Bakersfield. And so as we go ahead and get started, I'll introduce myself and then I'll call on our panelists to introduce themselves. So my name is Dr. Jacobsen. I am a professor of biology. I'm also co-director of our Title V-B program here at CSUB, which is focused on increasing graduate student excellence in STEM fields. So thank you all. Let's see, my research is in plant biology, but I'm not going to be talking about my research today. But we are going to be hearing from a lot of excellent panelists, some students as well as a faculty member. So I'll start by asking Money to introduce himself, to state his name and describe his research in his graduate program.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Money. I'm a graduate student at Kinesiology department, and I'm working with Dr. Kim on a project to see the effectiveness of RIPC, remote ischemic preconditioning, applying blood flow restriction and reperfusion to see if that affects arterial stiffness, which is the rigidness of the arteries. Potentially, we expect to see reduction in arterial stiffness as well as some hemodynamic response changes in blood pressure, mean arterial pressure as well. My career in teaching and hopefully join a PhD program after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Money. Jonathan, would you like to go next?
My name is Jonathan Juarez, and I am a graduate student in the biology department. My research involves leaf litter from invasive plants and how they break down in freshwater habitats, and comparing that to how they break down compared to native plants in our in the valley here. Hopefully after this I can get a job. I'm looking to be an environmental scientist, hopefully for the state or federal government, and a master's is going to go a long way to get me that job.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Emma, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm a student in the history master's program. Right now, my research is centered around sort of the history of science and women. Specifically, right now, I'm looking at mental health in the late 19th century. Right now, my career goals, I'd like to be a professor at a university, although I would also be open to going on to being a librarian or an archivist.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. Sounds very interesting. Mario, would you like to go next?
My name is Mario Gaytan. I'm in the biology program, and my research is looking at invertebrates and habitat restoration treatments and how we can use restoration to help manage degraded and destroyed habitats. I'm interested in conservation of endangered species, specifically Rhaphiomitis trochilus, or the San Joaquin Valley giant flower-loving fly, which is just native and endemic to preserve 50 miles east of here. This fly is currently being petitioned for federal listing on the Endangered Species Act, and there's not much known about this fly. Not enough to create a solid management or recovery plan for the species, which the federal government requires. My goal is to add to the current information to determine available food sources for the fly and how different restoration treatments may affect the composition of those food sources and invertebrates. I would ultimately like to go into conservation or management biology.
Thank you. So thank you to Money, Jonathan, Emma, and Mario, who are our student panelists. We're also very fortunate to have a faculty panelist with us. Dr. Kim, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Dr.Jahyun Kim. I'm in the Kinesiology department, working with Money. My current research topic is human cardiovascular response with certain interventions such as nutrient or some exercise and any other types of intervention we're trying to implant and see how human cardiovascular function can improve, especially some clinical population. So I would like I'm happy to hear to see all of graduate students sharing my thought on graduate program in our department or in CSUB.
Great, thank you and welcome. So for the rest of this session, we have a couple of set questions that I'm going to ask the panelists. And then after that, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So today's session is on conducting collaborative research. I'll start with our first question, which deals with collaborative research and how it's important to the research and scholarship that our students and faculty are doing in graduate programs here at CSUB. In modern scholarship, working with others, collaborations and synergistic activity are key. Does anyone on the panel want to talk about how collaboration is important to you for your scholarship and research? Go ahead, Jonathan, and then we'll do Mario next.
Yeah, I can start here. So my research mostly pertains to freshwater ecosystems and how they're affected by this invasive plant litter. But obviously, one of the studies of biology itself is ecology, which is how everything affects everything else. So while my research directly deals with freshwater habitats, we have a lot of great plant specialist professors here on campus. So their information and their knowledge into my research, even though my research does not directly involve studying how plants develop, their knowledge is extremely important to getting to my research goals. So with biology, at the very least, I can say most things affect other things. So it's very collaborative and good to have people who are specialized in things and getting their insight and their knowledge to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in your research. So
Yeah, so I think collaboration is very important in research, and I don't think I could do my research without collaboration. I'm currently working with the Center for Natural Lands Management, or CNLM, which is a large land trust that owns and manages the preserve that I'm doing my research on. I'm conducting this research on their existing study plots that were funded by and treatments that were funded by a $250,000 grant by the US Bureau of Reclamation. This is something I probably would never be able to do without working off of their work that they were able to do themselves. That grant recently just ended and they can't continue any more work. So I thought it'd be interesting if I work off of that. They've done a lot of vegetation research on these plots, but nothing involving animals or invertebrates. And I thought it'd be a great idea to complement their studies and give them a greater understanding of the effects of their restoration treatments compared to just plants. Because if it benefits plants, it may harm the insects. And that's what I'm trying to help to see if does it actually work.
From a little bit different perspective, from a history perspective, I think collaboration is important because there is so much overlap in projects. Like right now, I'm working on mental illness in the 1880s, whereas Rudy, who's here, is working on like religious panics and completely different subjects, but we have shared journal articles that we found and books we found that kind of relate to both. So I think collaboration is very important, even if it's just talking about your subjects with one another so that you can share, because you never know who's going to find a source that might lend some really important historical context to, whatever you're working on.
That's great. Yeah, I love the different perspectives from the different fields. So the next question is, what is your approach to communication and the division of scholarship activities? As a graduate student, you are serving both as a mentee to your advisor and others, and as a mentor, potentially to undergraduates or other graduate students that might be working in your department, in your program, or in your lab or office. How do you work as a student kind of on how those different activities and that communication works? Or as a faculty mentor with Dr. Kim here, how do you foster independent activity in your students, but also make sure that you're collaborating with them in the scholarship process?
I think Moni can explain more better since we are communicating more often. So first, I'm a new faculty member, and Moni was a first student who is work with me through his program. First time, I just let him do, but the progression was not really what we anticipated at the beginning of the project. So we switched our strategy to have a meeting weekly, and we can kind of communicating. And I spent more time with him to guide it for the project and giving him more direction-wise. So the more you meet with your mentor, you will have a better idea how you pursue or how you proceed your project and other things in academic, even course of matter-wise too. So I would suggest to have a meeting with your mentor regularly, once a week, even every hour meeting. That is really helping to moving forward the project and other components.
Do any of our panelists want to weigh in? Mario, go ahead.
As of now, I'm serving as a mentee for my advisor, Dr. Lucas Hall. Only that at the moment, because I'm still in the planning phase of my project, but eventually my goal is to serve as a mentor as well to undergraduates once I start my data collection. Before I started graduate school, I had about 5 years of work experience out in the field, so I have quite a bit that I think I can help them And one thing that I realized, and that what I experienced too when I was in undergrad, is that there's not many classes that give you real field experience of what you're going to encounter in the field, except for maybe a class. And I'm hoping I can give that to them if they decide to do field sciences in the future, if they don't want to be in a lab. And my work with Dr. Hall as well has also been split, because he's definitely taken on more of a mentor in the sense of showing me how to do work-life balance, and not so much the collection stuff, but a lot of the things that I'm going to need to learn how to live my life working full-time and everything else, because he's had a family and worked full-time when he was in school. And it's been very, very helpful getting that information from him, which I'm not so sure if I'd be able to get from other people who went straight into undergrad to PhD. So that's why I'm balancing it and working with it.
Any ever other panelists?
Yeah, I can say something here. So I finding a good, I think kind of building off of what Mario said here, building a good work-life balance and kind of, being able to dedicate time specifically to one or the other is very beneficial to, my success so far. And I hope to kind of, from my mentee, I've received that same note of make sure you maintain a good work-life balance. Don't burn yourself out, because that's, not a great way to be. And I would like to give that to any undergraduates that I talk to. Just make sure you take time to yourself. Don't burn the candle at both ends, because it's just, you're not gonna succeed that way. So.
All right, well, I'll weigh in actually on this one. One of the really interesting things about being a faculty member and working with undergraduate and graduate students is the kind of different dynamics that develop with different students depending on kind of their needs and their style. And it's always fascinating to me kind of discussing with students and crafting a collaborative arrangement that works for them. For some students, they really want to be independent, and it's really nice to have a student that wants to take charge and have something that is theirs, that they're lead on. For other students, they want to start off maybe working on a project where they're kind of doing a subcomponent of a project. So they're not kind of in charge of the big picture, and they want to work up to that. Always the goal is to kind of mentor to independence. But it's really nice, I think, at our school that we have a lot of different programs and different areas of support, different events like this that are open to students to meet students where they are, and then to help give them the skills and the language to communicate with their advisor, to develop a collaborative relationship in research and scholarship that works for the student and works for the faculty member as well. There's a lot of different models for that, and a lot of different options. So it's nice to hear from a few people about kind of your vision for being both mentored and then a mentor to others. So the next question is dealing with challenges. So what challenges have you faced in conducting collaborative research, and what steps would you recommend to others to avoid or mitigate the issue that you faced as a potential issue for a future graduate student?
With my project, the biggest challenge that I've found so far is getting through the red tape of a corporate entity. There's a lot of extra work and special considerations that I've had to do working on private land compared to working at a state park or something where you just get a permit and you can kind of do whatever you want as long as it's helping. That's my biggest issue so far. Another issue has been the disconnect between the preserve manager on ground, who has the day-to-day analysis of the preserve, and he knows what's going on, and the science director, who's in her office in Temecula, 200 miles away, who doesn't really know what's going on, and everything ultimately has to come down from her. And that's been difficult. There's been some conflict with my collection methods and my project timeline and my analysis methods that I've discussed with the preserve manager and what he would like. But it's worked. I think the best way to mitigate these issues would be to ensure that you start planning early. I've been planning since maybe almost a year ago. Before I even knew I was going to go to grad school for sure this year. I was fortunate to get the support of CNLM and get all my priorities sorted out, because I've been volunteering and working with them over the past 2 years. So I think relationships are also very, very important when it comes to mitigating some issues you might have.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Money.
So for specifically for like talking about human subjects research, it's hard to get participants, right? So in our case, we had a little bit tough time in the beginning to get participants. Right now, it's going better than expected. So one thing we can do to avoid that or to mitigate that is going to be working early or planning early. I was a little bit late into planning, so we had a month in already in the semester, and because of that, we have now less participants and less data to work with. So one way to mitigate is going to be talking more or going out more and getting a head start. And as Mario stated, planning early, that would help with that.
Great, thank you, Mani. Yes, Emma.
So one issue that I've faced is actually finding sources. A lot of times with history, you either can't find enough sources or you find way too many sources. So sometimes you might want to focus on, something that you haven't read much about. Well, there's a reason that you haven't read much about it, because nobody writes about it because there's no sources. And I actually started that this semester. I was going through some court documents in the archives at CSUB, but I just was not finding enough to warrant writing a paper on it, especially not a paper in 12 weeks during the semester. On the other side of the spectrum, sometimes, you find too much. You have something you want to write about because you love reading about it, but something like, World War II or Roman history, everybody's written about it. You can find literature out there about it. And something that I have used to mitigate that is just kind of rolling with the punches, I guess. Whenever I find a primary source that I really enjoy, I go all in and I will write a paper just ripping it apart. And I will find secondary sources that, bring in a little bit here and there that talk about it, and just completely deep dive into singular primary sources. It just kind of helps to be able to focus on, just something that might seem so minimal. Like right now, my main primary source is just a 30-page article from the 1880s about one man living in an asylum. And I'm doing my 3-minute thesis on it, and I'm also doing a research paper on it, and it's probably going to go on to become part of my master's thesis.
So I'll add one thing here before we move on. So I think the biggest way to avoid issues that I've come into personally during undergrad in the biology department, sometimes your classes will have like a semester-long project where you're working on some kind of project throughout the semester. Miscommunication early can cause big trouble down the line, where someone might think or have a different idea of what a project might be or what their expectations are, might be different than what the rest of the group thought they might be. So communication often is very important to making sure everybody's on the same page. And for me personally, a thing that I've make sure that I'm constantly working on is making sure that I ask questions if I am unsure, because that might lead to problems later. If I think one thing, but I'm not really sure about it, but I think I might figure it out, that it's probably better to just ask a follow-up question. It's a learning opportunity. And usually the people you ask, they're not going to think any differently of you. If anything, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to help you out. So just, if you're unsure, ask a question. It'll save you a lot of time later.
That is definitely great advice. So I have a follow-up question based on what I've heard from some of you. So different advisors have different numbers of students. And so sometimes you have kind of a group of people that are working with your same advisor. And so you have like a multi-person, very like specific group. Sometimes it's just one-on-one, like you're the only graduate student potentially for your advisor, or the only one working on a set project. How many of you are working in a research group that has multiple people kind of working with your individual advisors? So you have kind of a community there versus it's just you. And so your graduate community is maybe a little bit broader and necessarily outside of your advisor group.
I'm the only one who's my advisors. I'm the only graduate student, but there are other students in the research lab that are working on their own projects. And, it's in the lab, everybody helps on everybody else's project when they can. And that is really great because it can help teach you skills that you might need later, or might help kind of keep the rust off of those skills you haven't used in a while. And it serves as a great learning opportunity and fostering that environment for the undergrads or anybody else who might not be directly in your field or in your interest area of interest, but it might spark something that might propel them to do their research later, right? So
Yeah, in my lab, there's 2 graduate students. One of them is doing a sub-project. She's going off of somebody else's project that never finished it. But there's a bunch of undergraduate students in Dr. Hall's lab. I want to say there's about 20. What makes it slightly different for me is that he deals with mammals and some birds, but I'm the only one in his lab who's dealing with invertebrates. When I initially contacted him, I was interested in doing research on the kit fox, but funding didn't come through, so I changed it into something I had personal experience with. And he was very supportive of it. But because of that, I am kind of doing my own project, and he's helping more with the, again, the life balance and just learning how to conduct science. And he's kind of doing as much as he can, but there's not really anybody who can help me, but he's starting to figure out which students might want to help and learn something else, because he is an ecology lab, not a mammal lab. According to his lab, it's the Hall Ecology Lab. So that makes it nice that I'll have some help, but it's been weird talking to other people in the lab because they're kind of distant. So hopefully that changes over the next 1.5 years.
For our research, currently I'm the only one who's working in the lab, but Dr. Kim does have other graduate students he's working with, and I think it's just a different project we're working on. So, however, I have a couple undergraduate students who were helping me in the beginning, but as the semester progressed, they haven't been able to because of the schedule, but there are a couple graduate students, undergraduate students who are helping me on scheduling and screening process.
How about for you, Emma?
So I don't have any particular groups that I am a part of, although the history program is fairly small. I think there's 14 students in it. We all do know each other. We're kind of our own little cohort. We know each other because, we have all the same courses. So we're actively engaged in class together, and we're also actively engaged in asking about and sharing research. So we do know each other's interest, and we do, speak about a lot and kind of bounce ideas off of each other. Even if our research doesn't exactly match up, we can suggest maybe alternate areas to find sources. Maybe we heard about some kind of online archive that we can share. So even though we're not like a formal group or formal lab, we are still actively engaged as a group.
Oh, that's great. And one more follow-up question. Well, we're talking about challenges. Hopefully, we're coming out the other side of things. And so this doesn't affect what you guys are doing, but do you still feel like there are any challenges from lingering COVID-19 shutdowns and changes to things? I know human subjects research was really hard during the pandemic when campus was closed, but also getting out and working at field sites was difficult. Getting into the library was difficult. Is anyone still facing challenges from that? Or do you feel like right now, as you're moving forward, you're able to do that successfully? Emma, yeah.
So for me, a lot of archives have changed. A lot of them have tried to digitize items, which is helpful, although it can hurt with research because, instead of asking the archivist directly, do you have anything related to, mental illness, I'm relying on computer programs to recognize the words. And so because of that, a lot of things do fall through the cracks, although it is helpful to have more things online. Although a lot of archives themselves are shut or they've restricted access, like the Huntington Library will only allow PhD enrolled students to their archives. So there is a lot more restricted access, but things are opening back up and the digitization has helped a lot.
Yeah, I think this was one of the questions that was on the Title 5B application, that if COVID were to affect things again, how would you be able to continue and navigate around your research? I think with my project, it's pretty independent for most things, but starting to use graduate students or undergraduate students, it would affect my analysis because I might be looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of things. But I think, again, because I did start a little bit later and I had already been doing some of this stuff for work, I was able to invest a couple of years ago in my own home lab. So I have microscopes, stereoscopes, which it doesn't affect me personally to completing it, but it definitely would affect the timeline. And I think I could get it, but I'd also have to maybe delay by another year if I had to do everything by myself. So that's, but another thing is that I assume maybe a school or a lab would let you take home a microscope if a student could be geared with a graduate student, so that could help. But I think that is helpful that at least I had that stuff in the first place. But I hope it doesn't happen again because it's a lot to look through myself.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the last formal question. And this is switching from challenges to benefits. What are the benefits to collaborative research, and what are the important skills that you need to develop to do collaborative research where you're working with others? Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, so similar to what Mario said, like processing a lot of samples, it makes it a lot easier if you got many hands to do it. You know, that's a huge benefit to collaborative research. And one of the most important skills, I think I mentioned this earlier, is probably communication, because if, you know, you got to be able to talk to, you know, if you have undergraduates looking at samples, you got to be able to let them know what to look for. You got to be able to have a good communication pathway for them to be able to come to you if something goes wrong. If they see something they don't understand, they don't just write it off. So just being able to maintain good communication creates for excellent collaborative opportunities.
Dr. Kim, you might be able to speak to this as a professional scientist in kinesiology. You might have a very different perspective from the students on the importance of collaboration.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I was thinking about what else I could suggest before they come to the graduate program. I would say communication is good, right? It's important, but in order to make a communication, certain software, some of the IT technique, students and faculty needs to learn. We are living in 21st century, they are evolving really fast, right? There's new softwares, there's so many technology we can implement in our research. I'm not talking about some serious technology, but some basic technology, such as how to utilize Excel file, how to utilize email, how to utilize some of downloading those things, how to utilize EndNote, that types of things. It is helping to communicate better with your faculty members, because if we ask do those things and then they don't know how to utilize those software, it's going to be much challenging for both sides. So I think if you preparing graduate school, I would recommend it to have those types of knowledge to communicate with the other person, like some basic softwares to build your presentation better, those types of things. So that is a good big pointer to preparing your graduate program, I think.
Well, some of the student panels think about if they want to dive in. I'll make a pitch for the importance and the benefits of collaborative research. One of the things that we try to communicate to our students is that it's important for students to build a mentoring team. And so when we talk about mentoring, we often talk about students knowing that they have a lot of infrastructure at the university around them. There's people in financial aid to talk about, you know, mentoring through finding financial resources. We have the counseling center and the health center. If you need help in those areas, you have your faculty mentor for professional help. You have the graduate student center for graduate student questions and recruitment and trying to find a PhD program. And so you build a mentoring team that's all of these people that can synergistically work to support you and help you to succeed. And the same thing happens in research, where when you do collaborative research, you can think about your research team and all of the potential things that could be brought to that team. For graduate students, I think this most often comes up when picking who's going to be on your graduate committee, where you're kind of inviting different faculty with different skills to be on your committee. And it's important in that kind of arena to think about what your collaborative team needs. Do you need, I'm going to use Mario as an example. So do you need, if you're already working on like the ecology side and you have that covered, do you need someone who can help with statistics? Or would it be good to have a collaborative partner who's really good at publishing, who can help you when you get to the point where you want to write up your results to be ready to send to a journal? Is there someone who has good experience with that, who can be kind of your writing collaborator and help with that process? Do you want to have someone who's maybe very visual? So if you're thinking about how you're going to present figures or images, do you want to collaborate with someone who can do, for instance, let's see, I'm trying to think about aerial images, so you can see your research site and get like a really broad overall perspective. If you're doing research in health, do you want to have a collaborator who can actually help you think about ways that information could be applied more broadly? What is that team? Do you want a collaborator who can help identify funding sources so you can get support potentially for your project? And so collaborative research, besides helping, I think, be really interesting on the idea side of things, some of the most interesting questions are the questions that kind of fall between standard disciplines because they're in that missing gap. But you also can think about and benefit from collaborations from all of the different things that collaborations can potentially bring to a project and all the ways that it can make a project better, from collecting the data, thinking of the idea, to presenting it visually, to presenting it in writing, to doing analysis. So lots and lots of benefits broadly for collaborative projects and scholarship. That's the Dr. Jacobsen pitch on collaborative research.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, that the benefits of collaborative research are, one is that you can build off current research. I think that's what everyone pretty much does who does research, but also is that it gives you access to resources and study areas that you otherwise may not be able to get on your own. You also have people who are knowledgeable in the areas that you may not be knowledgeable on. So again, the preserve manager who's been on the preserve, sure, he's there day after day after day, but he's also been there for 22 years. So he really knows the ecosystem better than almost anybody around the entire region, I would say. He's probably the expert. So if I have any issues or situations where I find something or, hey, this happened, he's probably going to know because he's probably seen it a couple times. I think other skills that would be most important to have would be, one, be relatable. Show that you're truly interested in the work. Something that I'm finding out a lot that's very difficult for me, but I'm learning, is to compromise and meet in the middle. Even though I can't get everything I want, at least you're still doing something and you're also helping somebody else, which I think it is better than just doing things for yourself. But most importantly, I think that being able to show the value of your work and how it can and will help them in their own goals, because that will ultimately make it worthwhile for both parties involved to do research together.
That's great. Thank you, Mario. I think, Emma, I saw your hand up, and then I see that Dr. Kim also has his hand up.
The benefits of collaborative research in history is, the idea that the best way to learn anything yourself is to explain it to someone else. And so just being able to bounce ideas off of one another and explain your sources, explain your approach, explain your focus and your thesis and everything to someone who understands, how to break down a history paper is incredibly beneficial. So if you have just a single person who is willing to listen to you and knows they don't necessarily need to know anything about what you're writing, but knows how to construct a history paper, that is incredibly essential.
That's great. Thank you, Emma. And Dr. Kim.
Yeah, I would like collaborative research is involving many things, as Dr. Jacobsen said. We also looking for our students as a collaborator. So you guys are not only working for your thesis, and we also need a student who works with me. And both me and student, we work for same project toward our both goals. So if you are a student, do not scare to approach your graduate mentor or anybody who potentially wants to work with. They are willing to work with you to work with some projects together, because we also need graduate students. So I noticed that many of our graduate students in our department are not really approaching the graduate faculty early in their career in CSUB. My suggestion is, please proactive to contact with the graduate faculty members. Early is much better because you can already develop your research project or your thesis. So maybe you don't have any idea, but you can talk with them. They can help you to develop your idea. So do not hesitate to contact your graduate faculty members to initiating your research project and collaborative research with your faculty members.
All right, and we have a question from Adrianne.
Well, I kind of wanted to chime in because I work as a graduate advisor, and one thing that I see a lot of in graduate applications, both masters in usually STEM and PhDs, of course, are all doctorals, are the fact that you have to have an advisor before you can submit your application, right? Yeah, right. So at that point, you're already networking and trying to figure out who you want to work with. But something about collaboration in general, and this is again the advice I give any new or prospective graduate student, is when you collaborate on a project, on a thesis, on even just discussion in the classroom, you are also opening up your networking opportunities for future career opportunities, research opportunities, funding opportunities, or even just having friends that after you graduate will be there for you and you have something cool to talk about. Like, hey, do you remember when we were in the lab and it blew up? Like, you know, something funny like that, right? So that the undergrad is all about like, just get it done and get out. Graduate is like, no, let's get this done together so that we can continue to do bigger and greater things.
Thank you, Adrianne. And seeing you speak reminded me that I forgot to introduce you at the beginning of this session. But to everyone who's here, Adrianne Silva is in the Graduate Student Center, and she is our graduate advisor. So if you are a student and you have questions about graduate school, if you're looking for the right graduate program for you, if you want to know about our resources that we have available to support you as you're applying to graduate school or in graduate school, Adrianne Silva is your woman. So she is there to help you. And Adrianne, actually, while I have you in the spotlight, do you want to briefly introduce the upcoming Grad Slam competition that is coming up on Friday, December 2nd?
The Grad Slam is something that it's going to be our 4th annual, so it's something that is still new to our campus. And we have, I believe, 12 graduate students in different disciplines that will be presenting their research, kind of like what everybody talked about right now, but in a 3-minute kind of TED Talk. And of the 12, one of them is going to be chosen as the winner, who basically had the best presentation with one PowerPoint slide and some really amazing research information that we all can understand. And they get to move on to other kind of grad slams and other competitions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So December 2nd, the Grad Slam competition, which is the 3-minute thesis competition. And I'm very excited that all of our student panelists will be participating in that competition this year. So good luck to all of you. And I'm also very pleased that 3 of our panelists are also current Title V-B graduate faculty student collaborative research program, GCRP program participants. So congratulations to you for being part of that program as well. Oh, Adrianne has some questions in her chat. Oh, I thought we were off the hook, but no.
Well, I do have a question. So please, I would like to know, how do you manage your time between work, school, and personal life? How do you do it? How do you stay sane? And if you don't, tell us that you don't. It would be nice to hear an honest truth.
So we'll do Emma and then Mario.
I don't. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, it was really difficult at first, especially because this was my first semester. Something I learned really quick is I had to learn sort of my own body's like cycles. Like I worked better, later at night, in the early hours of the morning. I know that I've told Adrianne before, you're gonna get more out of me if you let me work from home, and I can work from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. than you ever would at 8 in the morning. So just sort of learning when my brain plugs in, for lack of a better term, was really essential, because I was able to sort of change my sleeping pattern a little bit. That way I'm still getting enough sleep, I'm not sleep deprived, but I'm also still dedicating enough time and effort to my studies.
Balancing work life and home life and school life it's a challenge, but I can do it. Yeah, I work outside as doing a lot of consultant stuff, but a lot of land management stuff, and I used to until very recently do a lot of my own business stuff as a field biologist. So I'm used to working really long hours already. So I think lessening that to take on school has been easy, but also being able to plan classes after the workday. I have a GIS course that starts at 5. It's 5 to 10, so it is all my free time in the afternoon as soon as I get home. But at least I know I don't have to skip work, and I'm taking an online class too, which is nice because I can plan around certain things. So I've learned a lot of time management. I personally don't think that I would have been able to do this straight after undergrad. So I think going to graduate school after having a 5-year gap helped me even more than I would have. I think I'm doing a lot better than I would have because I've matured. I've learned a lot more because I had to. If I show up late for work or other stuff, I would have gotten fired. It's a little bit more than, oh, I just get a lower grade. But the personal life thing, it's very tough. My girlfriend's, she's watching, and she lives in San Diego, so it's commuting back and forth sucks. Her trying to visit me, but also trying to do my own personal stuff, like go to the gym. I have no time for almost anything else that I would like to do. I can't watch anything. But again, I'm still focusing myself, and I'm not unhappy. I'm happy. As long as I get this all done before I turn 30, then I'll be good. But it's doable. It is. You just have to make sure that you're on top of everything and that you can see the lights at the end.
What I'd like to add is finding the balance is the key. In a sense, there's a lot of time, and how you utilize that time is going to be the key. So for me, even though I'm working full time and I'm taking classes full time for graduate studies, I still think like I have too much time. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like I don't have time. It's the balance you find because of the sleep, and then like the assignments and the project you're doing, the deadlines are coming up. So as long as you keep the balance between all that, you should be fine, from my experience. But some days it's going to be, some days are going to be bad. But again, overall, if you find that balance, you should be fine from my experience.
So one thing for me that I've figured out over the last couple of years is that finding a balance means everything doesn't need to be equal, but that means you still need to give everything time, right? For me, almost scheduling time to myself, just like you would a class, you would be scheduled for work. Sometimes having a set time of like Saturday from 8 to 12, it's all Jonathan, and Jonathan gets to do whatever he wants on Saturday from 8 to 12. Sometimes it can come down to that, and that's important to be able to make sure you don't bleed into your own personal time, because sometimes your personal time can turn into, oh, well, I should be working on this assignment, or, oh, I started reading about one thing that is now leading me to do more research towards my research, right? So it's just kind of setting that time for yourself. Even if you have to schedule it, that's what you got to do.
That's great. Thank you, all of you. And it looks like one of our attendees, Rudy, wrote into the chat, keeping a weekly schedule with writing down some obligations so that you get to cross them off when you accomplish them. And it is always nice to feel like you've documented that you are making headway and accomplishing things as you're going through. That's great advice. I much appreciate that Heather contributed to the chat to give yourself grace, to accept your own way that works best for you, which is very true, to find the thing that works for you. And it's going to be different for everyone. And the balance is going to be different for everyone too, and probably changes over time. This is great. Thank you, Adrianne, for that question. It is always a challenge to try to find the balance in our lives with all of our different obligations. And one of the keys to succeeding as a graduate student is to find that balance that works for you to help you succeed. And to reiterate what we already talked about, to communicate to, so that the people that are around you can help if they can help lighten your load when it gets heavy, so that means you can continue to succeed. That is all for the better.
One thing I'd like to add on the previous question, number 5, the benefits of collaborative research was, for me, I had zero experience in research, nothing at all. So because of COVID, when I transferred to Cal State San Bernardino, everything was online and I didn't get to do anything in lab, nothing. So when I got to graduate program, I was skeptical if I was going to be able to, learn at all. So now when I'm in the program, it's working with all the people. I've learned so much. Like I can't even explain. Like I never expected to learn that much without having any background in research. So if anyone wants to join the program, and that's one of the limiting factors, just join. You'll learn. You'll get through it.
That is great. I like this. We have a very can-do ending here benefits and making it work. So I'd like to just thank all of our panelists. So thank you, Money, Jonathan, Emma, and Mario. Also, a big thank you to Dr. Kim, who had to leave us to go, of course, to another meeting. Everyone's busy, busy, busy this time of year. This was really great, really insightful, and hopefully will help our current and future graduate students to succeed at CSU Bakersfield or wherever their graduate studies takes them. Thank you to all.
Thank you.
You make me feel